Okay, so welcome everybody. So I thought it would be good to explain what this 7 day awareness challenge is. But before I get started into this, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Emmanuel Ashley. I am the founder of Money and Mindset Coaching. A bit about the story about how this actually came about. I started off as a financial coach, helping people in the area of money. But then I realized that a number of people weren't achieving their financial goals. I then realized it wasn't about money, it was actually about mindset. I then transitioned into mindset coaching to blend these two in order to help people either save thousands of pounds or make thousands of pounds. Since then, I've been able to interview Olympic athletes on mindset and also coach therapists in personal development. So today will be a Spark webinar, and I call it as an acronym Spark for for short practical awareness to reach key to success. Okay, as well as that, I'm currently on a project at the moment called our Project Africa campaign to help people in Africa learn digital skills so that they can become freelancers. So this is an initiative to help people essentially put more money in people's pockets, but not only that, give them the opportunity to learn and grow with their finances. But before we start, I would like you to put these things down. Okay, let's talk about your goals. Now, for the moment, I just want you to get a pen and paper and write these things down. What do you feel? What do you feel that is important to you at this moment in time? What goals do you feel are really important to you? What goals have you been putting off? And why have you been putting them off? What would it mean achieving this goal? What would that mean to you? And how would it improve your life or align with your values? Just take some time for the moment to write those things down and use this time to exercise and reflect on this. All right, so let's talk about this 7 day awareness challenge that has been created. So, this challenge is designed to help you build awareness and take control of your goals. So, each day you will set a small, manageable task, reflect on whether you've achieved it, and observe any patterns that have emerged. The idea is around turning these tasks that you've been putting off into progress because there's always something that we should have done or we think we should have done that we haven't managed to do. Just because life gets in the way, there's always something that always takes a toll. So it's about making our subconscious patterns of behavior conscious so that we make better decisions for themselves. And what that will then do is create a lasting ripple effect for long-term success. So I want you to have a notepad and pen ready if you haven't, okay? Because you'll notice when we get to slides 8 why I've said that. So sometimes what happens in life is that we focus on our attention, and the more we focus on one thing, it isolates ourselves to get to where we need to be. And it's so important to sometimes focus on that one thing. Because there's always going to be distractions that come in front of us and sway us from where we are now to where we want to be. So it's so important to let your distractions, remove those distractions, and actually kind of focus and isolate yourself on the things that mean the most to you. So before we dive into this challenge, okay, I always say let's get the right mindset. So ask yourself, what is one goal I've been procrastinating on that I can focus on this week? Write that down on your pen and paper. And then ask yourself, how will achieving it bring me closer to my long-term vision? I always say, remember, this challenge isn't about checking things off, it's about shifting how you view obstacles. Think of it as a progress in disguise and using opportunities to grow and rise above. And it's really important to actually be thankful that there was even a problem in the first place, because the only thing forward is a solution. And that is very important because as humans, we're wired for survival. So we think the most when our head is underwater. So it's really important to acknowledge that. Now, let's talk about the power of writing things down. So research has shown that writing things down, writing your goals down makes you 42% more likely to achieve them. Why? Because it forces you to clarify your intentions and gives you something tangible to hold on and make be accountable to. During this challenge, we're going to commit to writing your daily goals, the simple act of transforming your productivity. There's a saying in terms of how you write your goals down. So think of it this way. Do you write your goals down in ink or in pencil? Are you an ink or pencil type of goal setter? Because essentially, if you're a pencil type of goal setter, you can rub them out and come up with a new goal, rub it out, come up with a new goal. So the question is, how much are we assessing the nature of how we even set the goal? So it's not actually setting it in ink or pencil, but actually in terms of the mindset, is our mind focused in setting the goal in ink or in pencil? Because life is about doing the things you want to do the things that you want to do. So it's no important that you need to make the progress or the process, I should say, really exciting, really exciting. So let's talk about something really interesting here. I call it the learning pyramid, okay? It's from Edgar Dell's Cone of Experience. Doing is the key to success. Doing the same thing is the key to freedom because it's all about repetition. And I always say that repetition is the mother of learning. Practice is the father of skill. So we want to constantly keep repeating our patterns of behavior until it becomes subconscious. And here's what it says here. So 10% of what people do of what people read, remember what they read. So only 10% of what people read is actually remembered. People only remember 20% of what we hear, which is really interesting to hear. So as you have a conversation with someone, you're only likely to remember 20%. 30% of what we see, which is interesting. So actually seeing something, we're more likely to remember what we see through images more than what we read and what we hear. But 50%, can you see where the jump now comes in, is of what they see and hear. So now combined senses plays a massive part in how we observe the things that we do in front of us, most importantly. 70% of what they say and write, okay, which is important. So you now can see that when you write something down, it's so important. Having goals written down puts a plan of action in place. So you can see how important it is to just have something written down in order for you to get from where you are now to where you want to be. And that's why I always say, even writing in the chat box is a form of remembering something that you will remember at a later point. No signs, okay. But most importantly, can you see where the jump is from 79 to 90%? 90% of what people do is remembered. So it's not about just what you say, it's about what you actually do. The action is more important than the behavior of thinking about it. So what are we doing in order to achieve the goal? So we've first of all written the goal down, which is absolutely amazing. And that's always the first start to getting from where we are to where we want to be. What we now want to start taking those actions. And that's where that friction always comes in. I don't know if you've ever been in a position where you want to do something, but something is stopping you. You know, something is stopping you. And I always say to my clients, every time you're getting closer to the thing that you want the most, it means that you're probably at the finishing line. So don't be worried about that friction because that friction is the key component to success. So let's talk about why do we forget things? You know, why do we forget things? So we remember, I always say that 50% of information is forgotten within an hour. All right. 70% is actually forgotten within 24 hours unless it's reinforced, which is exactly why I made this webinar 30 minutes, because you're more likely to remember what I've said over a longer period of time. And I always say that there's two ways that people change in life. Okay. The two ways is through repetition or emotional impact, which means that we fright ourselves or we fight ourselves into positions. So I want everyone in the chat box to ask themselves, to write in, are you a fight or fright type of person? Fight. Excellent. Fight. Excellent. Excellent. Right. So we can see here we all and there's no right or wrong answer. But I always say acknowledgement is key to bringing you from the positions that you are in, because it's acknowledgement that takes the first step. Always remember that you can't connect the dots moving forward. So it's so important that we take ownership of the dot that we're at the moment and know that we can actually take a few more steps because we understand where we are and what we need to change within our pattern of behavior, which is cool. And I think it's a really important thing to acknowledge when we're looking into goal setting. So let's talk about overcoming common goal setting challenges, okay? So we all face them, okay? So let's talk about this in more detail. So we all face challenges when trying to achieve our goals. It's really important to acknowledge that. So let's talk about a few of these common ones and how to actually overcome them. All right? So the first one I always say is the fear of failure, all right? It's so normal to feel this way, but instead of focusing on what could go wrong, ask yourself, what if I succeed? Remember, growth happens outside of your comfort zone, which is key. Growth happens outside of your comfort zone. So every time you come into a position where something is always questioning you, I always said I call it the finishing line technique. Every time you're getting closer to the finishing line, ask yourself, what if I do win? What if I do coach this person? What if I do manage to take on that course? What if I do? Because that's the moment of transformation, and it might not be about just saying it. It's about also writing it down and saying it at the same time. Remember, every time we get into a point of contact where we are getting compromised, it's not just about saying it. It's also about saying it, writing it, and reading it back. Say it, write it, read it. Say it, write it, read it. That is a key component to being able to trick the mind to constantly keep focusing on actually doing the things that you said. Tricking the mind that you can do something because you could always do it is the main thing. The next thing we're going to talk about is lack of focus. Sometimes our goals seem too high, too big, or unclear. And that's when we lose distraction. And to combat this, let's break them down into smaller chunks, actionable steps that can tackle one at a time. Let me give you an example. And I said this to one of my clients. So you might want to lose weight, or you might want to uh, lose weight. That's a perfect example. Now, what we might decide to do is go for jogs or go for walks, for example, to lose weight. Or you might have a certain amount that we want to lose, for example, or a certain amount of calories we want to lose. So what most of us might do is go for jogs, and set a target to go on a jog every day. Okay. And that's good because you're focusing on going every day. Now let's break that every day into a smaller chunk, okay, so that we have more of an understanding of what I mean by this. If you said to yourself, okay, I'm going to break this down into walking by time. Now I'm not walking by the date. I'm walking by time. I'm going to walk an hour a day, or I'm going to jog an hour a day. Now you've quantified it a little bit more, which is good. But now let's even go a step deeper than that, which is really important to success. Although we now know the time, let's talk about the route we're going to take. Let's talk about how close we can get to the route. So if I walk from here to the end of the road 10 times, I've met my target. I can then look at my wristwatch or find out exactly what I can use to measure it and know that all I need to do is walk a route to achieve my goals. So what we tend to do sometimes is we focus more on the skill set than the behavior pattern. So we think about what we're going to achieve at the end result. And then when we start it, we think the leap is so high that when we get halfway, we go, don't think I can do it. So we need to make these tasks into smaller, bite-sized chunks that are allowing you to actually get from where you are to where you want to be. The next thing is procrastination. All right. So we've all been there. That moment when we get started into something and then committing to it for just 5 minutes of action. All right. But often once you start, the momentum will carry you forward. So sometimes what happens is we say that we're going to do something, or we say it in the future. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it next week. But the one thing that we have no control over is anything. Other than we can't even control our lives. We can't even control tomorrow. But in as human nature, we think that we can, and that's what creates the procrastination. So every time we get closer to the things that we want in life, there's always going to be someone or something that takes us away. And it's really important to know what those obstacles are. So I always say one of the things that's really important when you're thinking about procrastinating is think about every single challenge that you can encounter before you even start the goal. Write it down, say it, write it, read it, okay, and say it out loud. What are my challenges that I'm gonna come across as I'm getting closer to my finishing line? Oh gosh, it could be if you're a parent, it could be child gets unwell, it could be a school from a call from the school, or you might be trying to run a race and it's whatever's not the right thing. So you have to think about all of these obstacles, because the more we create the problem, the more we create a solution. A problem, all a problem is a solution to be solved. So think of every problem as a solution to be solved rather than a problem to be unresolved. Okay. So it's so important to use these features of forward planning to get these places. Okay. And the last thing I always say is the feeling of being overwhelmed. And it happens. It happens. Sometimes we take too much on. I don't know if that's ever happened to anybody. Feel free to write in the chat box. Yes, if you have ever felt overwhelmed because you've just taken on the world, taken on too much, put too much on the table. Maybe it might have been eating too much. You put too much on the plate, you can't eat it. Or you've been in a position where you've gone to the supermarket, bought so much because you're hungry. I don't know if anyone's ever gone to the supermarket before hungry and bought more than they've needed to. So we have to then think about when we're in positions of setting things, what is our mind? How are we feeling about those particular things? What are these things that we're setting? Okay, how am I feeling? I'm going to set a goal tonight. What is my feeling? How am I feeling about this goal? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I upset? Let's track our moods with how we are feeling towards the goal. Am I upset? Has something just happened in the family? Is it a friend that's annoyed me today? As I'm setting that goal, what energy am I transferring? What energy am I transferring to that goal? Is it a goal, or is it a task? And there's two separate things. We set tasks that we come back to. We set goals to actually achieve. I always say that goal stands for go out and live. So the key takeaway here is that challenges are not roadblocks. They're stepping stones that help you grow stronger, more resilient. Facing them head on is the most important part of your journey. Always remember, growth happens in outside of your comfort zone, and outside of your comfort zone is where you shall grow. So what are these expected results? Okay, so this 7-day challenge that I'm creating is about being able to make you understand more about your subconscious. It's not more about the win, it's about your level of awareness. Because once you're aware of who you are, you can be aware of who you're going to be. I always say think 2 steps ahead as opposed to 2 steps behind. And this is an opportunity for you to have clarity on your habits and patterns of behavior, momentum to tackle those bigger goals that are in front of you, which is important, but also celebrate those wins and use them as motivation for continued growth. So let me speak about why this last component is so important. Whenever we're happy with something, whenever we've done something good, sometimes we let those moments pass. We might have just finished an exam or passed a test. Sometimes what happens is whenever we have something good, we don't celebrate those wins. We don't treat ourselves. We don't do enough to be able to pat ourselves on the back because life gets in the way and we lose those things. So what we want to do in those moments is as soon as we set a goal that we have achieved and we're feeling good, write down a component to that goal that would allow you to elevate to the next level. So I call it momentum goals, being able to create a goal in the element of excitement of winning the goal to use as fuel to challenge your next level of your goal. Okay, so it's important to do that. So you'll start to understand during the week that you may have not realized something. Okay, you'll probably realize a lot about yourself through this level of awareness, but that's the whole point of this, it's about having fun at the same time. All right, so let's talk about the power of small wins. So did you know that improving by just 1% every day can make you 30, 31, 35% by the end of the month? Okay. Or even 365% better by the end of the year. And that's the magic of compounding. So sometimes it's not about doing different things, it's about doing the same thing. As I said, repetition is the mother of learning, practice is the father of skill. So think of each step as a ripple effect in the water. Let's use that. It may be significant on its own, but over time, those ripple effects turn into waves. By celebrating these small wins, whether it's completing a task or overcoming procrastination, you're fueled with motivation to do something going. Let's ask ourselves, have everyone write in the chat box yes or no? Have you grown in the last 12 months in any aspect? Yes or no? Yeah, yeah, I've grown. Yeah, we've got yeses. So no one says anyone wants to say no? No? Okay, yeah, we've got some yeses. So it means that some of these growth journeys that we're taking are subconscious. We're growing by age, we're growing by wisdom, we're growing by knowledge. You've been here, you've learned something, you've grown. Just taking in something as a key takeaway, you've grown in some way. That's a win. That's a pat on the back moment. If you haven't, let's have a one-to-one. But if you have learned something or you're learning something at this moment in time that you may have not known or revisiting something, it's part of your growth journey. Growth isn't about just knowing what you know. It's also knowing what you don't know. It's also about knowing what you've known and reminding yourself that this is who you are. So, I always say growth is an identity. So as you think about your goals and you're working towards them, ask yourself, who do I need to become in order to achieve this goal? Who do I need to become? If I want to earn an extra $10,000 or an extra £1,000 a month, what version of myself do I need to evolve into? What mindset do I need to birth in order to get to attain that goal? I always say attain to maintain. It's easy to attain a goal, but the challenge is, can we maintain it? So as we focus more about getting closer to those things that we want to do, don't think about being able to achieve the goal. Think beyond the goal about attaining the goal. Can we attain it? So let's talk about the power. Let's talk about the 7-day awareness challenge, all right? Because I always say, if your life is worth thinking about, it's worth writing about. Because you are a lifetime's worth of work. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving people a form, all right, to fill out, all right, for those that are interested in joining this free 7-day awareness challenge. And it will look like this. So in this form, what you'll be filling out is your goal for the day. You don't need to fill out 3 goals, but you can fill up to 3 goals. Write down what is your goal, okay? Then ask yourself, did you complete the goal? Yes, no. If not, what obstacles did you face? Okay, this is the awareness part of the challenge now. What obstacles did you face in achieving this particular goal? And lastly, what did you learn or notice about yourself, regardless if you achieved the goal or not? What did you learn? Even if you was managing to get to school on time or wherever it is, I learned that something. So use that as fuel, okay? I've also written on page 4 how to actually set smart goals. We won't have time for that, but how to set smart goals will be on there. So on the page 4 of this particular worksheet, you can scroll down. You will see some smart goals there. You'll see some examples on the worksheet as well to utilize and assess. Okay. And I always say, also think about, as I said, the behavior pattern that's important. And it's so important to use that behavior pattern as part of your ability to achieve your goal. So let's talk about next steps, okay? So the next steps is, Ella, if you can, Bill, if you can, actually, I'll do it. I'll put it in the chat box. For those that are interested in this particular challenge, all right, there is a Google form to fill out. Once you fill out that form, I will then send you the link to that particular worksheet. What you will need to do is click file and download, okay? Or make a copy. So it's going to be in a read only format. So just make sure that you make a copy, send it to your own personal file, and then work on that particular task, okay? What I'll be doing at some point is I'll be checking in on you to assess via either WhatsApp or phone call to see how you're getting on with this particular challenge. See what you've grown in, what you've been aware of, what things that you've been challenged by, and we can have that discussion on a phone call, okay, or Zoom call or whatever works best. As well as that, I may also be contacting you in the week just to check in, and I may even give you an extra task here and there just to also boost that level of awareness as well that you may have not been able to do. So I always say, as we get to the end of this webinar, all right, one last thing, I always say is always remember that you are a human being, not a human doing. Because as we focus more about what we are, as we are in the present moment, we can do more for each present moment that comes. So I would like to say thank you very much for your time for this 30-minute webinar. And once again, feel free to contact me on my particular form.